Company culture is having a watershed moment. It is being reshaped in a crucible, fired by the pandemic, the acceleration of automation, the rise of millennials and Gen Z, and the great resignation, or like we call it, the great reshuffle. As per LinkedIn's Global Talent Trends 2022 report launched this week, this human centered company culture being forged has some recurring characteristics: flexibility, asynchrony, trust, belonging, and a holistic focus on well being. Employee well being is no longer an employee benefit. Rather, well being is now an employer's opportunity to support employees in all aspects of their personal and their work lives. Employee well being has expanded beyond physical well being to include emotional, financial, social, and career wellness. And as per the same report, when you look at what the top priorities of current job seekers are when picking a new job, good work life balance trumps bank balance. As 67% job seekers in India have picked work life balance over 57% who said it was compensation and benefits. Employees today are saying we can do better and companies can too. As LinkedIn's own CEO Ryan Roslansky said, it's a time when everyone is rethinking everything. Business leaders are rethinking the entire working models, cultures, and company values. Employees are rethinking not just how they work, but why. Gone are the days when companies could lead with perks, think ping pong tables, and endless snacks designed to make the office a home away from home. Today, forward thinking organizations are working with employees to make home and office away from office. For companies to attract, retain, and grow the talent that will bring them sustained success, they need to fine tune or even overhaul their culture to meet the expectations of professionals to be seen as human beings first. Hi, I'm Ruchi Anand, Senior Director, LinkedIn Talent Solutions, and I'm delighted to be moderating today's session, where we will hear from two industry experts and leaders as they reflect upon the most pertinent issues for the C suite today, giving you fresh inspiration and takeaways to apply as we predict and plan for the year 2022. Please join me in welcoming Ekta Singh, CHRO AGS Health, which is an analytics driven, technology enabled revenue cycle management company partnering with healthcare providers globally. Ekta is an HR business leader with more than 21 years of experience in talent delivery, benefits, compensation, staffing, and recruiting. Apart from being certified Six Sigma Green Belt and a coach, Ekta is also very passionate about diversity and inclusion and is a leading facilitator for several programs around this initiative. Welcome, Ekta.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruchi.
And joining Ekta is Harish TR, CHRO and Senior Vice President, Maverick Systems Limited, which is an IT services company working across digital platforms, banking solutions, data technologies, and regulatory systems. Harish has over 27 years of experience across various functions in human resources, hospitality, IT, supply chain management, and operations and HR services. Harish possesses a strong background in high growth and startup environments, building leadership teams, talent management, business transformation, and setting up sustainable processes. An accomplished leader, he has an ability to deal with ambiguity and champions in delivering results out of these ideas. Welcome, Harish. And we're
Thank
so
you.
delighted to have both of you join us today.
Thank you.
So thank you. And let's before we dive, deep in and start getting into the weeds, I thought a good way to understand how, both of you have personally been navigating these last 18 months or almost now 2 years, where we've seen a good mix of working from home as well as, working from office for a few days. Tell me, maybe, why don't you start by telling me, do you love working from home or would you rather be in the office? Or is there a balance that you like best?
I think I'm going to respond as a millennial and I am going to say balance of both. I like my flexibility. There are days I want to run away from home, that is, and spend time in office. And there are days I prefer to chill at home and not commute into work. So both, I think, 50-50.
Wonderful. Plus one to that. I have similar thoughts. Harish, what about you?
I would say 80-20. So at 80 percentage, I'm happy to be in the office because a lot of things can get done much faster and swifter as opposed to trying to set up a meeting and trying to catch somebody and do all of them. And 20%, yes, I think commute is one part, but I think in other than that, there are days when people have had their own issues over the last 2 years almost. I think come March is 2 years. I would say an 80-20. 80 vote is to office.
Nice, nice. And Harish, tell me, what is the hardest part about working virtually for you, and what is the easiest?
I think the easiest thing I'll take first. The easiest thing is a lot of things can be BAU. So life can go on, meetings can happen. We've had recruitment, selection, onboarding, virtually everything has happened, including separation and full and final settlement to that extent have happened virtually. But what is the most difficult part, I would say, is the connect and the empathy with
Mm,
people, which I think is missing in a virtual connect. Because as much as I do, as I try to make an impact, there are still some things which are best left for that. So, in simple terms, I would say a 10-minute interaction may be equivalent to multiple virtual sessions that you do to even convey or get an output. That's my thought.
absolutely agree with you. Anikta, what are your thoughts on what's been the hardest part of being virtual and easiest?
I would agree with Harish that the hardest has been not being able to meet people. You know, a lot of us are people who draw energy from external forces, people that we meet, work with, walk into someone's office and just have a casual, coffee or tea or a chat. That has been the most difficult. But as a woman professional, I do want to say that one of the days, my daughter, I remember it was summer vacation for her, and I was working and I was at home, but I was not with her. And she made a comment at lunchtime saying, you're home, but you're not home. That kind of hit home for me. It was one of those moments that I said, oh my God, what am I really doing with my life? Like you said, your CEO asked that question, right? Each one of us questioning ourselves. So that as a woman professional for me really hit very hard. As far
Mm,
as good, I would agree. Offer to exit, everything is end to end being done online. I think there were enough videos making the rounds on WhatsApp University, which made fun that HR should have known COVID was coming their way. We did not know. We were not prepared. But guess what? We all did rise up to the occasion. We all did come up together. We came and
absolutely.
worked irrespective. We killed the boundaries and silos that were there in organization. I think those for me have been the highlights of working remotely.
Fantastic. And I think you've actually, just shared, even in your first response around flexibility, as well as, what you've just spoken about in terms of, yes, HR leaders and the teams have risen to, to be able to kind of manage this. So in fact, let me start by asking you, as you reflect back on this time, what have been those biggest learnings that as you've experimented with flexible work, right? Because I know it's been a journey for all organizations. Nobody knew what was the best balance, and for each organization is different. So I'd love to hear from both of you. Ikta, why don't you actually share your thoughts first on what have been your biggest learnings?
All right, Ruchi, I will. So, firstly, let me share with all of you that I changed my job during COVID. I'm one of those, yes, guilty as charged. Now, what does that do to you is you are new in an environment, you've never experienced the culture of an organization. The
Mm.
culture mostly was, like you talked about, the vibrance in the physically in the office. So, I did not get to experience that. But my team was really very good, is very good. So, week 3 of joining, I kind of decided that I'm going to travel. I had all the guts in the world of January last year. In between, I guess, whatever phase 1 and 2 or whatever it was, I kind of said, I'm going to travel. So at least I got a glimpse of what it is all about. What has my learning been? I think with all the flexibility, firstly, organizations have started, what we call, at least in our organization, we're calling it work from home profiling now, right? So
Hmm.
there are some professionals that were rock star performers, top performers in the office environment, but in a remote setup, they aren't anymore. Now, why are they not? What are the factors that are driving? So we've actually come up now to say which professional will become successful in a remote setup and which role and which professional will not be. That's
Mm-hmm.
number one for me. Number two, I think it is the striking of balance. Today you can't tell someone come back to office, at least not in the organization I am at, and my colleagues and friends in the industry tell me it's the same for them. The
Correct.
minute we ask people to come back, there is a plethora of employees giving you resignations because industry is giving them options now. So we have to be open. That's my second learning. My third has been that the hybrid model is here to stay. Let's just accept it and
True.
move fast and figure things out. Fourth, which is I think my biggest one, is the focus on mental well-being. We had completely discounted this in India. We had not decided to talk about it. It was almost like a taboo word.
Hmm.
Today is the forefront conversation, like you said in your opening conversation, right? Not just physical and mental well-being, career well-being, we're talking about social. So it's a lot of these things that all have come together, and we are now talking very open conversation, very open dialogue. I'm very proud of it, actually. Very
Hmm.
proud that we as Indians have decided to have this conversation head on, and the world over as well, not just in India, but all over the globe. We are having the conversation of mental well being. So I think
Hmm.
those four would be my top takeaways.
Wonderful. I think very, very well articulated. Harish, what are your thoughts? What do you
Sure.
like to add?
So I would say, March 22, we sort of almost reached 2 years from the time that this pandemic hit us. And I would say, if you really reflect back, I think there has been a lot of effort on all quarters, be it clients, be it associates, extended families, to really look at readiness for something like this. And if we go back 2 years to do even a webinar or a session like this, we were paranoid about how technology would behave, or what would someone think if my child walks into the room or my pet walks into the room or anything. But I think today we have come, and I think all of us have learned to accept and move over the fact that it will happen, and we need to be a little patient. And as we already spoke about, from an HR standpoint, search selection to recruitment to onboarding to everything has almost become virtual with very few personal interface. But only what I would like to say is the sense of affiliation and belongingness virtually is very, very different than in an in-person kind of a setting. So if I can envisage an employee on day one in a Maverick or an AGS or a LinkedIn today, and then do a combined induction and then let this person go home, things would have been much better. But I think unfortunately we were not able to do it in various phases. It happened virtually. To me, I would say over and above whatever I think Ekta said, and I think what you said, Ruchi, in terms of home becoming extended office premises, there were a lot of things that people said. I work 12 hours, I work 14 hours, I work 24 hours, and all of them. So I think, the lesser we debate about them, it's better, because it is about each individual managing their life and their schedule. But I would say one thing that this put to test for at least all organizations, or at least I can say, is about manager capability, in terms of how does that immediate supervisor or how does that immediate manager have a more empathetic view to their own employee, and how is it that they are able to understand and appreciate that sometimes a 10 o'clock huddle can be a 10:30 also, or maybe a 9:30 also. So flexibility, adaptability on all quarters, keeping in mind uncertain conditions of family, of individual, I think really, really became big. And I think mental health, as we spoke about, was never spoken. It was not a subject in HR curriculum at all. But I think that has come to occupy a lot of space. The only minor part, which I would say with work from home and remote environment and stuff, is there is always that 0.1 or 1% employees who always find excuses to say, I'm not available, my video is not working, my screen is not working, I'm not having connectivity. But I think this is left to the manager to sort of go through and manage deliverables. So I would say today we are in a situation where if deliverables are clear, expectation management is clear, I think we are no more emphasizing that come into office for a 9-hour shift or a 12-hour shift. I think that may not happen in considerable time to come. So I think these have
Hmm.
been some of our learnings, I would say. So manager skills have been tested, organization skills have been tested, and so have HR skills have been tested in this period.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. In fact, this point that you touched upon, Harish, we've uh, Glint and LinkedIn have the State of the Manager report, which came out last year, and that said that the importance of, like you said, the first line manager is so critical in terms of how, at the end, how employees feel that sense of belonging and are being managed. In fact, we've seen that employees who recommend their managers are 2.3x more likely to be engaged, as well as 2x more likely to stay within the organization, right? So it's a very important point in terms of the role that they play. And Ekta, what you spoke about in terms of flexibility, and I want to hear from both of you. Flexibility also comes in different forms, right?
Yeah.
It's not just around like where you work, but how you work, or maybe some profiles do not would be different from one another. Like you said, you've also looked at the job profiling, right? But flexibility can be whether it is job sharing, or it is shift work, or compressed working weeks, right? There are different ways in which we can help employees to shape their work around their personal lives, which is what is important, right? And that's great. So let me move to as we've spoken about flexibility, let me move to another question. Eka, so if we look at this, the Great Resignation or the Great Reshuffle that we're talking about, it has one of the biggest challenges. That has been one of the biggest challenges that what we've been seeing, and attrition rates are rising or set to rise. What are the core strategies needed to tackle this in attracting and retaining the right talent, in your point of view?
Okay, I think Harish did touch upon a little on that, Ruchi. In my view, all of a sudden, I will say, not that we in HR did not recognize or realize the significance of first line managers, but for some reason, the physical contact and physical in office working model didn't
Mm,
necessarily showcase the significance of them. Now, remote working, what happened is, at least in our organization, I can tell you, we recognize that we've taught our, literally, in our learning and development programs, we've trained our frontline managers to have difficult conversations, how to give performance feedback, goal setting, and all of that. But we have robbed them of the opportunity of saying, how do I have an emotionally intelligent conversation?
mm,
How do I ask a simple, most abused question in English? How are you? And actually pause to listen to the answer, right?
true.
One question, and I was doing a pulse check, Ruchi, in with our employees one day, and I said, with a bunch of employees who had actually put in their papers, and I said, give me one reason why you're leaving. Believe me, half of the team actually raised their hand to the point when I said, did your supervisor connect with you daily? And the answer was no. That was the biggest disconnect. So their connect to the organization is their supervisor, the frontline manager. And if he or she is disconnected, then you have that entire team of 15, 20 people easy that are impacted. So imagine if two team leaders are disconnected, there you've lost about 40, 50 people straight away.
True.
So that, I
True.
think, is one area where we've had this challenge. The second, I would say, is technology led HR. So a
Mm,
lot of our aspects, and we could talk more about it, but Harish did bring in the aspect of right from pre-selection to offer. All of that got automated. We kind of tested the power of technology to say, can you streamline all these calls and system transactional process that is there? Can all of that go away? Can we introduce very simple thing we introduced in our company called mood meter, Ruchi? Now,
mm,
mood meter
mm,
is what We ask an individual when they are logging out, we just say, as they are hitting the log out button, we say, how are you feeling today? Happy, delighted, unhappy, sad, angry. All right. These are just the responses, and you can easily evaluate from there. You can connect that to the early warning attrition for us. The people who are angry, who are sad, yes, 1 day, 2 day, you can understand. No big deal. I'm having a bad day. But how do I use that data to speak to me and therefore convert it into an early warning signal? So we've been able to do that. Just one question can change the world, is the way we look at it. And one step at a time is how we are proceeding. Lots of trial and error, lots of bruises to show you.
Lot of battle scars.
Absolutely,
Wonderful.
absolutely. You bet.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, I think I hear you. I think once again, it's the significance and the role of first line managers is key. And
True.
even I think what you and Harish both have spoken about, creating that sense of belonging is so
Right,
critical.
right.
Sense of
Yeah.
connection, right?
Very true. One more thing I want to say is I had recently read a Harvard report which said, women were leaving more during COVID.
Mm.
And further to that, I read another report from McKinsey, which actually gave many data and points, right? Just as McKinsey usually does. And I just want to read this out for you all. So for SVP, VP, and C suite, right? The pre pandemic, so 2019 attrition used to be at 24%. That went
Mm.
up to 28%. So we're talking 4% increase. No big deal. All right. But here is where the challenge is, right? 17% of women pre pandemic used to leave workforce. Brace yourself. It is now 23% post pandemic. And most of these are women who are in their 20s to 40s because they are working mothers. So, no more that traditional 9 to 5 job can work for them. It's just not possible because schools are calling and saying, hey, thank you very much, school is shut today. So
That's
what do
true.
the women have to then do? They have to pick up the slack. So it's natural that this women percentage that is leaving the workforce, which is at 23%, is a huge number, right? And a lost opportunity of such talented workforce gone from the work, right? So that is another revelation I just thought we should, because I'm a diversity person, I always bring in that angle to all my conversations to say, hey, are you looking at DNI? Are you giving them different approach during this time? Are you being empathetic? Like Harish said, maybe a 10 o'clock call can be 9:30. It doesn't have to be etched in stone. That's where I was.
That's true.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing this up, Ikta. It's a very pertinent point because yes, we are seeing increased number of women leaving the workforce, and it that's where what I started with in terms of that's where it comes back to culture and what are organizations and again like what you all said, managers able to offer and create that space. And actually that brings me to the next question, Harish. As we are talking about this attrition and also and I know as your organization as well, you're looking at hiring in large numbers in a short span of time. um, when you look at hiring today, right, we are seeing that the approach that most organizations, or at least what we're looking at doing, is more of skill based hiring, right? We talk about skills, not schools, right? So how are you seeing this impact your recruitment landscape at large, and what are the benefits that you're seeing, because then even hiring is also becoming in some sense boundaryless to some extent, and also like with the focus more on skills, not school. So
Sure. Thanks. I think from a from a Maverick standpoint for us, ever since inception in 2000, so 2000 to 2015, we were close to about 1,200 kind of associates, and from 16 to 20, I think we are almost at 3,000, and from 22 to 25, the number is expected to touch about 6.5 to 7,000 people. So that is the kind of growth, which means there is opportunity, there is work in the market. Now, having said that, you are probably irrespective of whatever domain you are, whether it is banking or whether it is you may be in the same pool, and the talent pool could also be fairly similar. So when it comes to skill based hiring, Our view has always been something like this is really helpful to the organization because it helps me cut down my training, assimilation, orientation, and they just need to understand the customer and the project, and they can be much more speedy in terms of ramp up and productive. So, for example, if I were to consider in the primitive days of me hiring only Java skills and then going on to Java plus plus skills, but today, if I'm looking at more complex skills like a Spring Boot or a microservices today, I will want to tap and zero in on that market because that is really going to help me as opposed to bringing somebody. Having said that, while recruitment needs to be extremely focused, but I think we've been talking about the other pitfall of this remote working is access to opportunities are plenty when I sit at home and when I'm in a remote environment. So that is impacting all levels. So I would say we would also need to look at alternate methods. So I would say my
Hmm.
recruitment landscape would also need to look at getting people with maybe some skill sets which are adjacent to what my core skill sets are, and can I have these people over a 90 to 120 day or whatever, if I can bucketize them into different experience levels, that could potentially help me. So 90 to 120 days, whether I do it in house, whether I can work with a partner to ensure ramp up and productivity is fast, is something that is worth sampling. And this is something that we actually call a hire and nurture program. And I think there is a lot of emphasis and management focus in terms of something like this because you are also going a cross section of the talent pool. You're not focusing on only that skill based individual per se. And yes, I think we may also need to look at some partnership with universities and academic institutes to also see if there is some of these curriculum which can be introduced as a part of the courses, and maybe you can get some benefit as well as the students can get some benefit of some of them. So I think these are some things that have worked for us because I think talent war or talent attraction is today a universal problem. It is not a Bangalore or a Hyderabad or a Mumbai or a Gurgaon. I think irrespective of wherever people are, and today we've heard this new nomenclature in offer location. There is nothing called base location. It is work from home or left blank intentionally because you don't know when can people come back to work. So I think these are some things that we have actually seen.
Great. I'm just loving the practitioner's view. Both of you are sharing with these very specific examples. And Harish, thanks for sharing how you're using Hire and Nurture as a program and using skills adjacency. And I'm sure that that means that you're doing a lot of work to identify the skills, which are the skills that are there of today and which could be adjacent skills, which can be added and all of that. And while we're still at this, Harish, maybe you can just add. I when we were speaking last time, I think you also spoke about between when you're hiring, you also do a lot of work in terms of engaging people before they join with your senior leadership as well. So you probably want to just shed some light on that.
Sure. The last part of the skill based thing, which is really going to help us or my leadership team, is faster deployment, which means people are ready to be deployed to client locations. And I think billability and I think everything comes in. So that is the business view that perhaps we also need to have apart from a very operational view. Now, coming on to the time that today a candidate is extended an offer till the time that candidate is going to come and join us, which
Yeah.
can be anywhere an immediate joiner or a 30 or a 45 or a 60 or a 90 days, is a best speculation that all of us in the market and all our audience today can also have because we are all in the same boat. So we do certain events to sort of connect with some of these candidates who have been offered. So, and I think there is a significant amount of time that is invested from the CEO, the directors, the founder directors, and the core leadership members of the organization to spend time. So we typically do these sessions on maybe a weekend, and it's about a 90-minute kind of a capsule, which is sort of good enough to energize you and say, why join Maverick? So we
Hmm.
talk about the legacy, the growth, the skills, and I think you can ask any question. So I think we've seen people, we were not sure how this would take off, but we've been doing it for a couple of months now. I would say almost about 4 months, and it is really really good. People are open to ask questions, and you can get any kind of questions. You can get questions from why do you have a probation period to what could be growth and career opportunities. Will you provide certification for me? Will you provide on-site opportunities to me, and all of them. And I think what something which we have seen, which our leadership has said is in this call, and we call this as a cultivation call. So in
Hmm.
this call, in fact, our CEO clearly says that I am promising you this, this, this. If it does not happen to you in 30 days of joining, come back and question any of the people on this call, which I think is a very, very a bold statement to say, and we can only say it if we can do it, because
Right.
otherwise that time is going to come soon, and the people are going to come back and ask you on some of these things. So this has really worked very, very well in terms of engagement and connect. But yes, that doesn't take away the last moment surprises of a Monday not joining or a Friday not joining. But definitely, this is a good step, and we can get the pulse of our candidates' mind also. The similar
Right.
effort is done once they join as well.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, no, I think this is great in terms of the focus and the time investment by the leadership, as well as clearly driving accountability. That's great. And since you spoke about growth and career opportunities are key questions that normally come up, I'll pivot to you, Ekta. More around when we talk about our existing employees, right? A large part of what people look at is what can I have a career path visualization, right? If in fact when we look at it, there's a report that says 1 in 5 employees have taken a new gig outside to, you know, in from their full-time job to gain new skills, and essentially it's all about how can I get better, how can I grow faster, and so this is an area where HR is taking the lead and can get ahead by being the one that enables employees to understand what their career path is, and like I said, all the career path visualization. So how are your L&D programs ensuring that there are enough learning opportunities which empower employees to see this growth path, as well as even for the organization to pave a way, a path for more internal mobility?
Absolutely. I think that's a very interesting question you are asking. And in fact, this is one of the realizations definitely that last 2 years has given, which is one size, one career does not fit all. One learning platform or one learning program or curriculum that you've designed for a certain grade, everybody should be taking it, does not fit all. That model is gone. So it's, we are living in the world of Netflix and Amazon Prime and God knows how many other OTT platforms. Learning has become in the same way. I mean, I have millennials who come to me and say, give me something that's fun to learn, right?
Hmm.
It's not, it doesn't have to feel like you're learning, but you're still learning. Now,
Correct.
that's a world we are living in. So, how do you cater to that? I think the new ways, I would say, number one is probably look at creating what we have called the career maps to be fluid, which basically means once you decide, once you go, you click on a certain program, like in Netflix. If you go click on a crime thriller, the next time it's going to prompt you, hey, you want to do this, right? The same way, I'm not suggesting everybody do, in that manner, but once they go and say, hey, I want to learn about analytics, for example, next program suggestion will be, you've done basics, here are certain advanced programs. That's one. The second, I think, is micro learning. It's become a very big thing because none of us have time. Let's face it, we have not more than 15-20 minutes of attention at best.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the senior you go, the less the attention span. I read a report about it, don't ask me to quote which one, but yes, that's there. So therefore micro learnings become very important. And the catalogs, of course, of what can I choose, what can I pick, so I can customize my learning to what I want, even though I may be at the same grade as my peer who's sitting probably in another location altogether, but maybe the same grade, right? So that's the third thing. But the most important, I think, for me, if you ask, has been that we have to now forget career path as a ladder in an organization. So if you join learning or recruitment or any other function, it's not that you have to grow in that. In fact, there is one of my team members in the current organization who went from HR to actually go and take a rotation and do transitions, which is a core operations job, right? How once you sell, how do you transition that into operations? How do you figure that out? That's a very tough job for anybody to do. But for an HR L&D person to say, you know what, I want to explore something, is an HR conversation today. So we have to catch them before they switch off, for which you need to have very regular connects. You have to build that relationship where they can tell you, listen, I'm bored. And this bored comes at a very young age today. It doesn't wait for 20 years of experience to be bored, right? So you have to ask what is their interest. And to what Harish was saying, the skill that we talked about earlier, hiring based on skill. Hey, for all you know, we hired you based on that skill, but 2 years later, you don't want to do that anymore. So, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
So, alternate career paths. You have to be very open to the idea that someone will come with no experience, but lot of passion and maybe deliver better than someone who has experience but zero passion. So, in
Hmm.
HR, I think that's where we are headed.
Fantastic. I really like the way you've distilled this down for us, and especially I think what comes to my mind is uh, it is also with this approach the role of the platforms that you use. Like you said Netflix. I think what is important for people is discoverability. How can I easily find the different catalogs of learning that I can, that I want to consume, what is aligned, and also a very strong AI that actually understands what my learning preferences are and serves that up to me. And I think this to me sounds a lot like it's a very important role that LXPs play, the learning experience platforms that play in terms, in terms of bringing it together, making it easier for people to kind of learn, as well as the importance of micro learning. I think as well as constantly checking in. I think that's where
Yeah.
also it's important to can your LXP give you that ability to also see reports of what skills are being learned, consumed, and what Harish also spoke about, adjacent skills. How's that trending? How's that growing? So I think that's great. We've also learned a lot, with our LinkedIn Learning Hub, how we've seen some of this come to life. So that's great to hear. Let me do one thing. I see a lot of questions that have come in from the audience. Let's kind of just pivot to some of those, and then we can probably, if you have time, go back to some of my questions. So let me go to one question which says, I know we've spoken about hiring, but maybe if one of you want to share your thoughts. So Shirin is asking, what new hiring strategies have you tried and found successful, especially for tech hiring, where there is a lot of demand for talent? Um, any of you want to kind of go first, and or maybe Ekta, you want to add?
So,
So
Shirin,
question.
that's a nice question. Thank you. So, as I said, one is a skill based approach, and as I said, the other one, which we have sort of tried, is a hire and nurture kind of a model. So, even, and I think that is where I spoke about adjacent sort of skills that could come. And we are also looking, and I also saw one more question, which was a very interesting question, which spoke about talent marketplaces today. Which
Hmm.
is also closely linked to this question, because we may not be able to find all the talent externally in the same pool or in different cities. So, what are those center of excellences which we can sort of create within the organization where some kind of capability and skill building can be there? Because I think clearly from our own organization standpoint, people who started off in roles like quality assurance, from testing to quality assurance, made a move to data businesses and digital businesses before we went large scale. So I think in any of these things are definitely possible. It is a matter of seeding these at the right time and ensuring that people get an environment where even if they sort of do not succeed, they are protected or taken care by the organization. I think as long as I can do this, the ability to take risk is much higher, because maybe in 2020, people were very apprehensive about various things, job losses. I think today nobody is talking about those things. Today, I think jobs have multiplied 10 times. There are more jobs than number of people in the market. So I think it is very essential for every organization to look at things differently. And I would really say what worked in my previous organization is not going to work here, because I think culturally, customer requirement, the kind of technical roles, and the expectation of the leaders for each of them are distinctly different. So we will have to effectively partner with them, whether, as I said, it's a university hire or maybe even return to works. Maybe there are a lot of people who took break for whatever reasons and want to come back, whether it is women, men, irrespective. I think those are some of the kind of channels. Plus, I would really say with our country heralding towards the new labor codes and laws, talking about things like gig and platform workers is a big way in which hiring and is going to change. I think the country is ready to accept people in these roles who could come with multiple skill sets, and they may not want to work only for Maverick. They may want to work for all three of our companies together. But that is something, if it is possible and if it is feasible, why not? Because I think it's always going to be I think market on the other side for some side to go. So I think that is what I would say. Talent marketplaces internally are very, very hard to create within the organization, because there is always a tendency to hoard my good talent or key talent and not willing to let them move to other
Mm.
roles. But I think it's a matter of time that we have to embrace this, because if not, I lose them to somebody else in the market. So
Very true.
those are my
Very true.
thoughts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks, and thanks for answering even Maria's question on the talent marketplace. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Just 2 points, I think. One is that we've tried a little of our hand with part-time working with a lot of the women who had quit workforce. We actually started with them going back and asking if they want to come back to work and work part-time with us. This was during June, July of last year, and it proved to be very successful. They were willing to work 20, 30 hours a week, but not full-time, not 40 hours. So it kind of worked very well for us. And the second thing that worked well is the internship. So we were able to try before we were able to hire, right? So it's a marriage these days. So they will try the organization, how's the culture, am I fitting in, am I not fitting in? And at the same time, you get interns who are you able to train them before you can deploy, right? And so if you give them offer during their last semester, that really kind of works very well. So that's another point. I think those two areas are what we've also tried doing new in our talent acquisition space. Otherwise, a lot of AI enablement, making sure that we source our resumes, we are able to filter them using AIs, we are able to send updates as the steps process move on till the offer stage. All of that, of course, has been going on, I think, even before pandemic. So I won't take credit for that at this point.
And only one thing I would like to add, Ruchi, is I think today tier one, tier two cities or tier three cities may not be the only markets. We may have to go deeper. And I think our country has that opportunity and potential, because at least current my pool that I look for is engineering graduates or people with that background. But sometimes when you think, do you really need engineering to do some work like this, or a science graduate or even a BCom graduate with Java or some skills like that also perform? So I think we may have to look at the things differently. I would really think that is also going to be a key differentiator.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you, and I think there are a lot of takeaways here. I'd also like to add one aspect which, while we're thinking about this, is a lot to do with. It goes back to skill-based hiring. It goes back to, like boundaryless. We're going deeper. We are creating more equitable opportunity for more people. Even from smaller cities, and today getting them the jobs which they don't need to relocate for, which is fantastic in terms of the way we are able to kind of see progress and growth for people. We are able to kind of look at non-traditional talent hiring, which we are looking at, like we said, skills, not schools, diversity. The other thing is also there is a key role in, like, I think how organizations actually are ending up contributing or thinking about it as from a sustainability perspective or green economy, right? The role that this is building in, and organizations are really making efforts, and with all of this combining that and being able to reduce their carbon footprint and having more sustainability goals. I think there are so many benefits and outcomes that are coming with all of this, with the expanding of these talent marketplaces. um, I'll just go back to one question by Chandana, which is around belonging. The question is, affiliation was traditionally influenced by physical proximity because that's how we were programmed. Now that hybrid or remote is going to be a part of life, What are some of the HR initiatives or HR strategy focus areas that can influence creating the same affiliation and cultural belongingness? Ekta, would you want to probably share your
Very
thoughts on
good
this?
question. Firstly, I would commend that. It is one of the most difficult, I guess, sources to crack during this time, right? Many people, many organizations also are trying different things. It's a trial and error, but for us, what has worked probably are two or three things. One is we've had our HR business partners and our frontline managers partnered together to connect with our employees. I myself, along with all the CXOs in the organization, we have every 6 weeks a connect with the entire organization. So we divide and conquer, and depending on the different grades, we kind of meet. And just like Harish was talking, for the new, before they are even hired, the questions here also, it's an open platform. They can ask us any question, and we are held accountable for what we promise, and we make a commitment for. That's another way to create. But I think the biggest way is to listen. And what I mean by listen is, whether you use via a tool, maybe you do an employee engagement survey, you're listening, you are responding. There's a chatbot we've created which can answer basic questions. But these are the ways that you can stay connected. For me, another very interesting way of staying connected, because I think I'm passionate about learning, is via the learning platform, right? So we have our learning engine, and in that, what I do, like you were saying, I go facilitate programs. I don't just sit back and say, hey, someone else is going. No, I go and share examples, use cases of what I am experiencing. For example, during COVID, frontline managers would not even ask an employee. They would call and say, okay, you have so many charts to finish, where are you? Right? Without even asking the basic of, are you okay? Is everybody in your family doing well? Because nobody knew what we were dealing with, right? So teaching that basic emotional intelligence questions and way to conquer, how to do critical thinking, those were some areas which helped me and my organization build culture. But biggest for me will be listening. If you stop doing that, I think, yeah, I don't think we should be coming back to work. We should pretty much log out and not log in, is how I put it. Very crudely, but very realistically.
Mm. So I would quite agree to most of what Ekta said. I think listening becomes a fundamental piece. As I said, from our point, since we do an event pre joining, the onboarding and the leadership involvement, even post joining, is very, very important, so that people in this virtual environment don't feel lost, and in 15-20 days start thinking, am I in the right place or should I look for something else? So I think that first 30 days is, I think, what we have seen as, whether you call it a honeymoon period or a period to be disillusioned after the honeymoon period, I think is something that has hit us strongly. And this kind of connect with leadership involvement and the HR involvement, I think, has been very, very structured. In addition to that, I would say constant communication in terms of where the organization is headed, in terms
Hmm.
of what is the plan and where do you fit in the larger scheme of the plan, I think is very, very important in this phase. Because while everybody will know that only if the organization is growing or you're acquiring more clients, or you're today, I talk about going into a third city, which is Pune, which means there are so many more opportunities for you in that city, or internal movements. I think that is sort of what brings in that kind of connect. So I think a lot of it will have to be a genuine emotional connect with people, in addition to what Ekta said. So I wouldn't like to repeat some of those pieces. But, and I would say fundamental piece is clarity in terms of expectations. As I said, empathy in the beginning. I think, what do you expect from your people? What is it that your people expect from you? This needs to be a very good listening, or a, I would say, more of a conversation than we trying to say, no, we used to do this in the past, this is not working. Because somebody today has come and said that this is not working, or I don't think this is working. So it's good to listen to that individual and then see either if you can fix the problem, or this may not suit your requirement. Be open and communicate. I think this being very objective helps the person from not expecting anything beyond or have unreasonable expectations also.
Hmm. No, I couldn't agree more, specifically around the point on constant communication. I think when we talk about belonging or the sense of feeling connected, I think that's where all the more in a virtual world, communication becomes so much more important. Like you said, be it constant communication by leadership, be it through town halls and all hands, where there is one way of constantly sharing how the company is, like you said, company is growing, what's the path ahead, because I think that's where people start feeling disconnected, where we don't know, okay, all this work I'm doing, what is really it, it amounting to, where is it going, is it being is it impactful enough, is it big enough, right? And I think everyone needs to know that they're playing a significant role in this big in this big world of work, and how they are contributing, and how it's linking to the larger purpose as well. So
No,
yeah.
even to a great extent, Ruchi, even people who have never seen the office. I'm sure in all our companies we have people who have never seen the office and only see a payslip at the end of the month. No, but in those cases also we are mandating some people to come to office in smaller batches, maybe batches of 15 or 20. If you want, we can do an RT-PCR test for you or an antigen test. Please come. You are in a safe environment. Come get a feel of the office, interact with a couple of people, and then go home. We see then it's much better. So their connect psychologically and even the physical connect is much, much better. So this is something which we thought, many people said, yeah, you may have, people may quit, but that's okay. We'll have to live with all of them. So we indeed mandated smaller groups. And despite all these things, there is something that I would really like to talk what is running even now at its peak in Maverick is something called Just for Pleasure. So it's a group of people coming together to do various events or activities, whether it is biking, whether it is cycling. So about 2 weeks back in Chennai, about 50 people went on a bike for 100 kilometers drive. So they were apprehensive, but then they said, we have to make it, it has to happen. So things like this happen, it is not forced. People come in because they feel safe and they feel that they are comfortable and nobody is sort of policing or monitoring. Arey, you came for bike ride, but you're not coming to work. No, we don't do that.
Right, right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
One more thing I want to share now that you talked about the hobby clubs, Harish, which is we've actually gone app based. And for our CSR, we've got this impact app that we've asked all our employees to download, and we walk for a cause. So there is an orphanage that we support in each of the cities that we are in all the four cities currently: Hyderabad, Chennai, Vellore, Tirupati. And we are soon going to Jaipur, so we'll naturally get some connects there. But employees can sign up and say, I'm walking for this cause. So as you do your regular exercise, you're also donating your steps in the form of money
Mhm.
for that cause. So that's a very good way also to stay engaged. Since you asked that question, that was another idea I thought I'll quickly share.
Yeah. No, I think these are wonderful ideas, and I think the role of and this is again connected to well-being. It's connected to what, and there are different different things that will bond people together, right? Different interests as well. So I think even the role of employee resource groups is very critical in organizations to be able to create that space and that sense of connection. Um, that's great. So I had some rapid fire questions, but I'm going to, I think I've got some of those from the audience. So instead of me asking those, I think there are some wonderful questions from the audience. So there's one question from Tanveer, which is a question to both of you. What's the one thing that you absolutely want HR to stop doing right away in 2022?
I
I can
love
go
that.
first.
Sure.
In simple lens, I would say it hasn't worked in the past. It will not work in future. I think is one of the most fundamental derailers for HR today in this context, because we have done certain things in the past for many, many, many years. So if I were to say we started in 2000, for 21 years, sort of we have done certain things. I cannot say I am not open to changes. So even as I spoke about things like gig or casual worker or contractor or half or part-time wages, or even I don't know, maybe India will also reach a stage where you pay by the volume of work that is done. Maybe it could only be volume based work or piecemeal kind of work. So I don't know, these kind of things could come, because gone are the days where I have a stringent car lease policy, I have a stringent ESOP plan. I think people want everything today in their bank now. So I think that is what the entire concept is. So I think a lot of things, I would say, in terms of constant review of policies, not comparing, but what suits your organization. I can never think and do what maybe Ruchi you would do in your organization today, but I can understand and try and see if I can either adapt it or do something drastically different, because I can't cut copy paste everything today is one of them. So I would say, and
Context changes.
context changes. And I would say the other thing HR to stop doing is say I am a talent acquisition person, my lifelong, I join at 20, retire at 50 in TA. No, I think you should be open to a broader set of challenges, because I think coming together of all functions is also going to be the way to go in times to come.
Absolutely. That talks about what we've been talking about, the one HR approach, where it's an integrated team, and they're like, how do you break those silos? Ikta, what are your views on this, on Tanvir's question?
So I love Tanvir's question actually. I would probably, bring it to a micro level from the macro that Harish was explaining at. And I would say postmortem. Stop doing postmortem. Stop saying yesterday why people left. They've already gone. You can't, I mean, what you didn't learn yesterday, I doubt you're going to learn today. Okay. So let's be realistic and let's look future. So
Hmm.
how can I use data and science to my benefit, right? In HR, if we are selling that, then use it before you can sell it. Number one. Number two, move into behavioral science. Start thinking about the why behind the what behavior. We are
Hmm.
tired of the what behavior. What are we doing? Where are we going? Start questioning, why am I going there?
Hmm.
Ask the bigger picture question, because I think that's most important. Most of us in HR get so wound up about transactions and interaction with a key leader that we forget the why in the picture. So I think behavioral science talks a lot about that. And a lot of professionals, especially the HR people who are listening, should definitely go and read a little on it and equip yourself with data science analytics. I think that's really very important. It can help you in many areas. Like I said, I do not like postmortem anymore. I only look for future. I see how can I improve my world better tomorrow than it is today. That's what I would say.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I know we just have 3 minutes to go, but in very short, if you can give me one more answer from Prateek, his question, the question is, what are you both personally most excited about in the HR space for 2022?
First,
Lot of.
personally, I would think it has to be a unified HR strategy. And I
Hmm.
really think we would have worked many years in our career in different roles, but I think it has to come together. And I would say before we can go and educate our business counterparts or think we are educating them, I think upskilling and capability development of HR, I think, is very, very important. And I think something distinctly essential is comfort with numbers, because this is sometimes that most cases in HR we think this is not my job except my compensation specialist. But I think ability to understand numbers and appreciate a business context, I think, is going to be, because so far we've been speaking about approaches like be an influencer, be a seat on the table, all of them. But I think understanding your business fundamentally and what works in this environment, because many things could have changed in the last couple of
Hmm.
quarters, I think is going to be important. And also be empathetic to your other functions, how a TA person struggles with getting a candidate on the door, how an operations person struggles to generate an employee ID and go through that technological nightmare or challenges, I think are going to be really, really the key differentiators.
Wonderful, wonderful. Ekta, quickly your
I
thoughts
think
on.
for me, the one HR definitely resonates from what Harish said, but I would give it a different twist. In my organization, currently we are working to getting into a consultative mode, which basically means diagnose the problem and provide the solution. Don't just say there is a problem. So I'm training my team to come to me when they tell me, Ekta, there is a problem. I say, and so they know that means they have to give me the solution. I'm not going to sit there and give that's the coach in me, I guess. But that I think is exciting me a lot, because it will change the conversation and the dialogue at the table with the business, with our employees, in both spaces. So I think that is what is getting me very excited this year.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Harish and Ekta. And in conclusion, I would say that, when we talk to a lot of talent professionals as part of our Global Talent Trends report, we asked them. We heard a lot of this phrase when it came to recent evolutions in company culture. We kept hearing once in a generation. What we're seeing. So if one leader used it to describe disruption, the other said opportunity, and both were right. So, for organizations everywhere, this is a time that is teeming with challenges, but also a lot of opportunities. And see this as your opportunity to reinvent your company culture, to help you retain your existing talent, grow your talent, and attract next generation of great employees. And especially after today's conversation, where we've got so many tangible takeaways and so many examples, both from Ekta and Harish. I'm sure that there is so much more that you would love to go back and learn and put it in context what works best for your organization and apply. Thank you so much, Ekta and Harish, and thank you to
Thank
all
you.
of you who joined in. Thank you for your questions. Sorry we couldn't take all, but we've tried our best. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation. See you, and stay safe and stay healthy, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank